All right, we're live. Chris, you going to start us off? Going to do a little hoot hoot, raise the roof? Oh, did Chris freeze? Either that or she's really good at being still.
Being still. I think she froze.
Yeah.
On my screen, so I think she did.
Yeah, I think she froze. That's hilarious. Well, at least it was a good freeze screen, not one of those where it's kind of like, and then you freeze, right? Those are always the best. Well, how about I'll introduce Hunter.
We'll get it started.
But let's get going, guys. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Erick Mueller. I'm a teacher over at Leeds, and I'm a colleague of Hunter Albright, our guest tonight, who's going to lead you through, just some really valuable, practical tools for you guys in the NVC and doing the executive summary and some other communications that are going to be so valuable to you guys. I've got my pencil sharpened tonight. I can't wait to learn from Hunter, who's just an expert at communicating and writing things such as an executive summary. He's a colleague, he's a friend, he's an amazing business person in our community, and he's going to lead us through how to create an executive summary. So welcome everybody, and with that, Hunter, take us away.
Well, very good. Well, thank you, Eric, and hello, everybody. Happy to be here tonight. Should be a fun night. Couple things, just please use the chat. Eric and I will monitor it and try to grab as many questions or comments as we're going through it. So I want to make this as interactive as we can as we go through. So let me sort of share my screen and we will jump in here. All right. So I hope everybody is, we're here to talk about executive summary for NVC. The key things I want to highlight as we sort of kick off is we're going to focus on the development of the executive summary. And this is, required for anybody that wants to compete for the prizes, which I hope everybody does in terms of NVC. And just as a heads up, right? So March 1st is when the executive summary and the pitches are due if you want to do the compete in specialty week, and then March 23rd for round one. We'll share this deck. It will have all the links for additional information, and then there's some resources that I'm going to talk through that will be shared. As well. You'll see here in a bit that I will talk a lot about sort of a one-page type style, but just to sort of cover off, for NVC, you can go up to 2 pages, whatever you think is sort of most helpful and can best communicate what your venture is about. So we'll talk about that more as we go through it, but just to be clear, for the NVC, the executive summaries are up to 2 pages. Okay. So what will make tonight great? So I think our goals and sort of my goal in particular, let me go back one, is right. We're going to sort of learn the basics here, right? In terms of really get you sort of on a clear understanding of what the basics of an executive summary is, what it should include. And we're also going to get you started, right? We're going to do some exercises as we go through the executive summary so that you know how to get started. You have some momentum. We're going to do some individual exercises as well as group exercises so that you can interact with everybody and actually start to get some feedback on what your concepts are and how you can effectively communicate them. We're going to share a couple resets of resources. There are NVC resources, and then I'm going to share some templates that you guys can use as you go forward, both for your one-pagers, and there's some other things that I'll point you to. And then the other thing that I think will make tonight great will be you guys, right? Eric and I sort of love it when everybody interacts. We'll sort of monitor the chat. I'll pause to answer questions as we go. But this whole session is for you. So, if we're not addressing the questions you have, please call it out, and then we'll make sure we spend time and walk through that. Okay, a little bit about me. I think the key thing I want to sort of highlight, as Eric mentioned, we're colleagues and friends. We cause as much trouble as we can and in as many places as we can.
You know
it.
it.
And I think, my sort of a synopsis of my background is I'm sort of a geek at heart. I have sort of a PhD in engineering, but have really spent my life in helping launch businesses and helping launch new products. And have learned a lot from all the mistakes that I've made along the way. And actually, what we're going to talk about tonight is near and dear to my heart because it was probably one of the things that I struggled the most with early on in my career. And it took me a while to get over it and sort of figure out how to be more effective at sort of influencing people and selling products and raising capital for businesses. And, sort of my academic sort of engineer got in the way until I learned how to do it. And what ended up happening was I actually then have spent the rest of my career being a conduit between business people and engineers because I had learned how to navigate and communicate effectively between those groups. So hopefully I can impart some of those lessons as we go through tonight. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is what I refer to as one-page magic. And if, I firmly believe that if you follow and practice what we talk about tonight, it can change your life because I know it has for me. What we're going to talk about is simple, but not easy. It takes sort of a lot of time to practice. You've got to do the work. There's no real easy path on a lot of it. But it does, I believe, open up a tremendous amount of opportunities for a number of sort of products as well as relationships and just really progress as you go forward. And the third thing I would say is part of the process and part of the magic of sort of the one-pager is really being open to feedback. I'll talk about it a little bit later about limiting yourself to one page forces you to be more specific, but it also leaves gaps. And those gaps allow for conversations, allow for relationships, allow for you to be surprised about the way people will help you and what you can learn from others, as well as how you can improve the elements of your idea and venture. So that's our jumping off point tonight. So let me talk a little bit about magic. So first of all, do we have any magicians in the house? Not something that I've ever done. I've always been fascinated by it. But when I looked up the definition of magic, right? It's the power of apparently influencing the course of events using mysterious or supernatural forces. So my sort of assertion to you is that we all have that power to do that in terms of the way we communicate. And in fact, it's one of the things that ventures and products and sales and even sort of getting employees and your team on board is all about your power of influencing. And for me, that all comes down to 5 things, right? It's our ideas that we think about. It's the words that we use. It's doing this with purpose. It's doing it with creativity. And it's letting your personality shine through. I mean, Eric and Chris and I and anybody that is a judge, an investor, or working in this space, we see so many different executive summaries. We see so many pitches, and it's so refreshing when people let their personality come through. And so we want all of them to be technical. We want all of them to be great ideas. We want all of them to be able to sort of change the world. But the key thing is that ultimately, any investor, anybody that sort of chooses to spend their time coaching, we're picking the people. We're picking people that we care about, that we want to help. So, as much as you're trying to sort of craft the perfect pitch, do think about and allow yourself to let your hair down a little bit, as you communicate your ideas and have your personality come through. Because ultimately, I feel like communication is the answer. I don't really care what the question is, but if you can learn how to communicate effectively, you are sort of, I think you're 90% of the way there finding the answer, especially given that for all of us, as we go through this journey, we are always reaching out and asking for help. And so some of the tools that we'll talk about not tonight are not only a great way for you to communicate what you know and what you're proposing to do, but it's also a great way of asking for help in a very constructive way. And that ask might be for advising, it might be an ask for help with capital, there might be other things you come up to, but the communication ends up being key, and it really will revolve and help you with the relationships. Okay, so for me, as I go through this, learning this skill and learning, and let me actually put this on so you guys can see me here. There we go. As I was sort of going through this and learning, I got taught how to write my first sort of one-pager when I was, I don't know, about 3 or 4 years out of sort of finishing my doctorate. And and so basically somebody pulled me aside a little bit by the scruff of the neck. I mean, here I was, I had just spent 9 years going through university, sort of learning and sort of getting my sort of PhD. And I wanted to talk about all the detail and everything that I sort of knew and how sophisticated the solution could be. And they sort of pulled me aside. And so one of the first things I'll talk about tonight is sort of a one-page memo. And it changed my life. It really has. I mean, I can't tell you, job promotions, getting budget to do projects, raising millions of dollars of capital, selling $1 million of products, all have been on the back of, one, learning how to effectively communicate in a simple way, and then having the confidence to do it. Because we tend to over communicate and put too much in there when we don't have the confidence or we're trying to know everything. And so I think there's this brilliance and there's this empowerment in terms of being selective with what you put down, and then the gaps that it allows for others to help, to influence, and for all of us to be vulnerable in terms of accepting additional information and support along the way. So what we're going to do tonight, there's sort of 3 things that I'm going to walk us through as we go through the session. The first one is going to be principles. So I'm going to share what I think are some of the key principles that hopefully can guide you no matter what type of writing you do or communications that you go through. The second thing that we're going to focus on then is the process and tools. So I'm going to highlight 3 different sort of one-page tools that I use, and that I'll sort of walk you through. And then the third thing is we're going to have a little bit of play. And what I mean by play is, as we learn the principles and we learn the steps of how to potentially apply them, we really all don't learn anything or sort of learn how to get better at it until we sort of play with them. We put them into practice and we share the results out with others. So we'll try to, in a rapid fire session, go through all of that tonight, so everybody can sort of get a little bit of a sort of process going through it. So the 3 things that we're going to cover from a tool base tonight is this first one I refer to as sort of the one-page memo. And then we'll go through that structure, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But really where we'll spend the most time is in the company's sort of executive summary. And I know this is what you guys are, need to have turned in along with your pitch. And so we'll spend most of the time there, and then we'll close out by really talking what I refer to as sort of a one-page website. And the nice thing about all of these, and we'll go into a little bit more detail as we go through, is that there's a real purpose for each of them. And I believe that there's a different purpose and a different audience that each of these really helps you serve more effectively as you're working on communicating your ideas. For me, the one-page memo is much more about a one-to-one influence. It might be your boss. It might be sort of an individual investor, but it's really for a specific topic and you're trying to sort of communicate effectively with them. The company executive summary oftentimes is generally, I would say, a little bit more of a leave behind. It's targeted at investors. It can be targeted at key employees, right? People that you want to get excited about your business and about the details behind it. And then the one-page website is a great tool to be sharing with your prospects, really sharing with the world what you're talking about doing for your business, so that now you can get feedback from the market. And I think the combination of these three things together can really help all of us as entrepreneurs, one, communicate effectively around individual topics, two, help people get excited about our idea, and three, help customers understand how we can help them and get them excited about working and collaborating with us. All right, so let me go through some of the principles, that sort of I think are important. And a lot of it comes down to this, I think the Mark Twain quote is appropriate, right? I didn't have the time to write a short letter, and so I wrote a long one instead. And, would encourage everybody actually not to skimp on time. And when you think about writing stuff for your business, really focus on writing the short stuff and writing really tight and concise. Because the more that you do that, then I believe that you have better conversations and develop better relationships with the people that you're going to want to be working with, and having them support you as you go through the process. All right. So first thing of sort of principles is really for me around sort of structure. And, the one page I think is important, right? Because it provides sort of constraints. And it also then provides sort of a, let's call it a limited hurdle, in terms of getting started. One of the hardest things for a lot of us is that if it's too big a lift, we just don't want to get started. So for me, I've always thought that the one-page structure, it's like, oh, it's only one page. I can get enough down to fill one page pretty quickly. And the other thing it does is it really forces you to lead, what I think about leading with your highlights, leading with your best bits. There's no reason for us to start a conversation with some of the things we're not as excited about, which then sort of leads me to the rule of threes. For me, it's always been helpful just to say, look, I'm going to pick the top three things, the three most important things that I want to communicate, and get that down first. And then if it's really important, you can start to add on maybe the fourth or the fifth. But as a way to help you get you started and help get sort of the content down on paper, start with just three things. Think about what the most important three things are, get them down, and then use that as a base to sort of build from, and either change them out, add to them, but really sort of it gets you started with some focus and some limited capacity. And then the third one on structure is then numbered lists. So really encourage you to think about, don't ever put down just a bulleted list. Think about sort of numbering them with letters or numbers, mainly to help you think about what's the priority, what's the order of importance that you're talking them through. And that can be helpful for others to take away, some of the importance and the meaning as you go through your presentations and your pitches. All right, so the next set of principles are really around the writing. So I think encourage you to use action words, right? You want to sort of you're going to build this, or you're going to sort of recruit customers. You're going to grow the company by 30% over a given period with $500,000 investment. So rather than being sort of passive with the language, especially if you're going to be using bullets and headlines, really think about how you can lead with an action verb, have a really clear subject, and then be thinking about the change or the impact that you're looking to make as you go through it. Second one is be concise. So, I tend to use in my writing lots of bullets and lots of short statements in terms of communication. Some that might not be your style, and we'll look at a couple different styles of executive summaries or company summaries that you can do. But I do think less is more in terms of the words, so that you can focus on what's important, and you can then have conversations around the things that people don't understand. And then the third element on the writing is be specific. And I guess think about this as use facts. Rather than saying the market is growing, and therefore it's a great opportunity, how much has the market grown? Say the market grew for 30% from 2019 to the end of 2020. The more you can be specific, both it gives an investor or even somebody that wants to be your partner or employee the clarity and the confidence that you've done your homework, that you know what you're talking about, and you've done sort of the hard work in the background to help validate the opportunity. The other thing is on the customer side, it's really helpful to be specific in terms of the impact you're going to make for them. How much money are you going to save them? How fast are they going to be able to, how much faster are they going to be able to do something? Is it 5 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it 24 hours? So the more you can take out adjectives and put facts in or put specifics, I think your writing will improve and you'll get better questions and you'll get better understanding in terms of what you're looking to communicate. On the delivery side, the key things I think here, we've touched on a couple of these, but the first one is to have a conversation. There are very few times now in my career that almost anything becomes a formal presentation. And I think it's very helpful for any one of us. I know it was helpful for me as I was sort of had been going through my career, is that if I think about I'm just having a conversation with Eric, you know, I'm a lot less intimidated sitting down with him. If I'm just having a conversation with somebody to share some ideas and get their feedback, it just mentally, it helps sort of change the view of the pressure of the situation or the perceived pressure of the situation. And the one pager sort of does that, right? Because I mean, I can't tell you the number of times where I lived in the UK for 10 years and worked at Barclays. And while I was supposed to have a meeting with the CEO or with one of the board members, can't tell you the number of times we ended up saying, hey, can you ride with me in the elevator and let's have the conversation as I'm transitioning between meetings? Or can we go grab a coffee because I've been in back-to-back meetings? And then not being dependent or geared up to give a formal presentation and being comfortable and just, hey, here's a one-pager, let's chat it through, just was always a great sort of safety net, if you will, for me as I went through my career and what I ended up feeling like being a great way to communicate. Second one is the leave gaps for the feedback. So that was one of the things that the one pager does is sort of, I'm not trying to over communicate and just creates opportunities for discussion. And then I think one of the most important things then that I had to learn in many respects was to listen. So, you know, be comfortable with a little bits of moments of silence and not trying to fill in the silence with additional detail. Actually put something out there and see if somebody comes back with a question.
Awesome. Hey, Hunter, we got a very important question in the chat here. Benny is from the UK, so he wanted to know where you lived in the UK.
Oh, very good. So Benny, we lived in Northampton, sort of just north of London for about 4 years, and then lived in Wales, just outside in a town called Penarth, outside of Cardiff for 6 years. So really enjoyed living over there. Sort of we are diehard sort of supporters. I think my son might have joined this call here. He's sort of grew up. He doesn't sound anything like me. My daughter and son both sound British through and through. We get strange looks when we were sort of going around town. So there he is posting the Welsh flag in the chat. So
that's super cool.
So, you know, it's, you know, as much of the one pager is about communicating, the delivery becomes important as well. So again, for me, it's always been a great way to sort of just think about sort of lowering the expectations and engaging in more of a conversation, because I think what you guys will find, and I hope what you find, is that, you know, people like Eric and I and others that might be investors or advisors, you know, want to help. And so if you give us the gap to help, if you let us learn a little bit more about you, your personality, both your strengths and your weaknesses, or your strengths and your gaps, there's a better ability for us to help. And it's actually really enjoyable to help people that want help. So don't feel like you have to know everything as you go through the process. And then the last thing is, you know, within sort of the, you know, especially within sort of the NVC, I want you to start to think about standing out because of the constraints. And, I think this is true for the writing in terms of the one pager. Think about how you can use that to your advantage and stand out because it's forcing you to be more selective, because it's forcing you to be more critical. And in my opinion, that's no different than what any of us are trying to do as entrepreneurs. We do better, and I believe entrepreneurs do better when there are constraints, right? It's sort of the mother of invention, because of the necessity. And if we start with a blank page, it oftentimes is hard. But if we start with really clear constraints, then we can sort of invent more with purpose and innovate with intention as we think about how we go through the process. The second thing is lead with headlines. So again, show off your best bits. We don't have to know all the things that are real struggles when you're coming out of the gate. Like, give us your best stuff. Like, as we think about these one pagers, I was telling Eric earlier tonight when we were chatting, think about your headlines. If you were to be writing a front page of the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal that was going to be all about your company, what would be the headlines that go on that front page? And in many respects, that's exactly what you want to be thinking about your company's executive summary. It's exactly what you want to be thinking about a headline. Don't lie. Don't sort of cover up. There's things, if you're putting the risks in there, talk about the risks and be clear about it, but use headlines about what is the main thing that is the biggest risk of your company, because you might find somebody that will come in and help you solve that if you clearly articulate it and you sort of are able to amplify the main one. But again, I just think the key concept here is lead with headlines. And then the last one around is show your personality. So we talked on that, but do let that come through. Have a bit of humor. I was very fortunate to have Dave Query be a coach in some of the classes that I teach through Leads. And for those of you who may or may not know, Dave is a very successful entrepreneur who runs big Red F restaurants in town, and so Zola and the Post Brewery and Jack's and the West End Tavern. And he always shared his business plans that he had written for the restaurant. So we went through him the class, and his humor was all through the business plans. An investor could read that doc and not only know that he knows about the business, but he knows that Dave's the good guy and he's the kind of guy that he probably wants to hang out with. And so, again, as I sort of mentioned before, for the people that are in this day in and day out, you can stand out, I would argue, almost more so with your personality in the right way than with trying to sort of overwhelm people with sort of the facts about your business.
And I just want to jump in real quick, Hunter, and really plus one that thought. Folks like Hunter and I, we read hundreds of executive summaries, right? And you've got, your ticket into the game is that it's well written. You lead with headlines, as Hunter's saying, but I think the ones that get to the top of the pile and ones that will allow you to get to the next rounds at NVC are the ones that are creative and innovative and show off that personality. So I just wanted to really emphasize that point. You guys will have a competitive edge if you can really allow your personality to shine through. And Hunter will talk about some specific tactics here, but thanks, Hunter. I just wanted to pop in and just really emphasize that point.
No, that's great. Why don't we use a little bit as a pause? Any good questions? Does anybody have any questions that we can address just in terms of some of the core principles or anything not clear?
Could you give us ideas of how you stand out with your personality in writing?
So I think humor is one. I think using, talk like you would from a conversational perspective. I don't think, I would use the humor, be casual, don't be over formal. Don't write in a way you wouldn't talk to the investor. The other thing that a little bit like I've done tonight in terms of sharing personal stories, if you have relevant things about how you came to the market or about why you feel like a market is frustrated, communicate that. I think you guys, maybe many of you had attended sort of a pitch presentation earlier in the week about developing sort of a video. That's always one of the things that I look for when I look at is somebody leading with a story and drawing me in at the very beginning. Don't, before they tell me about the solution, I want to know, I want to care, right? I want to care about you. I want to, when I'm reading your executive summary, and one of the, I think it was Melinda that asked the question. Melinda, one of the best places, especially on these executive summaries, is in how you describe the teams. So don't necessarily just say, Melinda is going to be the CEO and then Hunter is sort of the director of marketing or whatever it might be. Give that some flavor. You might sort of say, Hunter is passionate about sports and sort of living overseas and international travel. And through that, he loves to talk with people. And so we're putting him in charge of all of our customer service. Right. And so you can think about how to just bring your personality in around there. And I think the team is a great place to do it. Eric, any other thoughts for you on that?
I think you nailed it. I would just say a tactic is exactly what Hunter said is in storytelling. The more you can think about, telling a story is key. And then I'm a big fan of eye candy, I call it. Graphics that aren't just, cut and paste graphics from the internet, but, align original creative graphics that help tell the story as well. And a point of process, looks like Satyam, looks like your microphone is on. If you can mute that, unless you're going to jump in and ask a question, that would be great. And then Hunter, there's another great question in here from Liju. How do we avoid conflict between personality versus professionalism?
So I think that's a really great question. It's a little bit of maybe one way to think about it is would it be something that you would say to your parents, right? So there's probably a line, and maybe your parents may or may not be the right thing, but I think you want to be casual without being inappropriate, and I think everybody has to probably find that right line. And the one thing I would say is I would be you, right? I mean, I wouldn't be vulgar. I wouldn't be, mean. I wouldn't be sort of derogatory in anything you say or anything you do. But there's also an element where I believe that we all perform better if we are who we are. And if we end up not fitting or meshing with an investor or with a customer, I'd rather know that earlier rather than later. And so, I feel like we almost, in many respects, the needle has swung too far in terms of being sort of professional, and we're void of personality. So I tend to be more forgiving to say, ooh, I wouldn't have said that, but maybe we'll have a conversation, as opposed to not getting any sort of vibe about who somebody is or what they're about, because it's all been washed out. So, Liju, I hope that helps.
And I would add real quick, Hunter, one tactic I've always used is have a couple other people review it. Be careful about adapting or adopting everything that they share, right? Really let your personality shine through. And if it's a little edgy, that's great. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't pause and get a little bit of feedback about kind of their story and what's hitting the mark and what's not. Ultimately it's your call, but get another set of eyeballs on it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And if it's an angry email, sleep on it. Get feedback and sleep on it before you send it. Okay. So one of the key things for me that I think became really important, and we'll touch on the one-pagers, is this idea of you need to earn your audience's respect and their curiosity to share more details. So I think that if you think about everything you're communicating, that you want to communicate your headlines and you want to be really respectful and appreciative of who you're talking to, share enough to get your message across, and then let them bring you in more. This is like Eric does a great job at talking about this when he talks about sales. And the concept here is no different. You want them to believe it's their idea. You want them to pull you in and ask you the details, and you want them to get invested in the conversation, in the story, in the journey, in terms of getting to it. And this was the one lesson that it took me probably 5 years coming out of sort of graduate school to learn, is that, less is more, fewer words are better than more words, and headlines are better than details. And so I think if you can start to make that shift, experiment with it, you will earn the trust, you will earn the respect of people, and they will invest the time to learn more. And then, you know what? You've just built a relationship that could change your life. So, think about that, because ultimately everything we do on the venture side in a lot of our careers is enabled by, powered by, assisted by the relationships that we build. And we're all busy and everybody has a lot to do. So if you can be concise and excited about that, then that becomes great. All right. So now let's get into a little bit of the process. So we'll get you guys writing. And we'll have a little bit of fun as we go through it. So the first thing I want to just cover off so you can see it, I have a template a link that you guys, I'll share this template. This is just what I use. I have saved it in sort of my Google stuff. I always open it up and it's where I start. And the really simple structure here is this summary at the top, right? You've got, this is your main point. And then these are your 3 main points down below that sort of support it. And then the only thing you're doing in the rest of the memo is for each of those main support points, you're giving 3 supporting details under each of them. So if I'm sort of saying, hey, my company is great because we've acquired 100 customers, we've built version 1 of our product, and we have clarity that we have an 18-month runway with $500,000 of additional capital. Then my 3 subsections there are going to be, I'm going to have a headline about the marketing in terms of the customers. I'm going to have a headline about sort of what we've done on the product, and I'm going to have a headline about our capital needs. And you're going to then sort of substantiate each of them. And so this could be anything. And if you think about that headline or that main point, it could be because you're trying to convince somebody about a certain thing. It could be that you are trying to have a certain ask. You might want a raise, might want a promotion, or you might be asking for money to sort of get help. Or you're making us very specific recommendations. So if you're working internally in a company and you're advising to do X, then that would be your main headline. So I'm going to go back to Barclays. So one of the things that I use this a lot, we did marketing campaigns across the UK, and we would at the time, right, sort of dating myself, this was all direct mail, and we would spend sort of roughly 15 million pounds a campaign in terms of sending out the post. That was a lot of posts. And so we would say, we're recommending we invest 15 million pounds to send out for campaign X. And then we would say, it's going to bring in this many customers. It's going to bring in this much balances in terms of receivables to the bank. And these are the known risks, right? So we'd really simply lay it out in a 1 page, and then, we would pass that along, and sometimes it would get signed off, and other times we'd get called in to answer questions. But it became a really great way of influencing people with recommendations for decisions that we were in support of. Okay, so we're going to shift gears now and probably spend about the next sort of 15, 20 minutes on the executive summary. So these are just 2 examples. I'll give you the one on the right. The Family Box is a company that I had done a couple years ago. The one on the left is an example that is on the NVC site. So 2 different styles in terms of, one's a little bit more prose based. And then, as we've been talking about tonight, the Family Box one leads with a summary, but then has sort of bullet points around the different sections, and also includes some graphs and some key metrics to help sort of bring the numbers to life a little bit. And again, going back, I'd done this sort of five years ago. I would even simplify the numbers on this page even more now, and have them stand out, have them be the big numbers, because one of the things I would say about numbers is no matter what number it is in your business, the numbers are the mile markers that allow you to tell the story about the journey in between them. So I want, as you think about your financials, if you think about everything, I don't really care that it's $2 million in year 3 and it's $1 million in year 2 and 500,000 in year 1. Any investor is going to be more interested in the story of what it takes you to go from 500,000 to 1 million, what it takes you to go from 1 million to 3 million. So think about the numbers as mile markers, and then you fill in the gaps maybe with some bullet points about how you're enabling that and how you're getting there. But these will give you just 2 different examples of sort of styles of company summaries. These are some of the areas that you guys should be including. You don't have to include all of them in terms of your executive summaries. We'll talk here in a sec about sort of concept description, right? This is really your elevator pitch, your summary of what you're all about. And I think it is, really focus on doing, getting it down, practicing it, using it all the time so you can sort of get as much feedback as Eric was saying earlier, like with your communications. The more you use it, the better feedback you're going to get. Talk about the opportunity, talk about your product, talk about the value proposition, your marketing strategy, right? So that can be your go-to-market plan. The team is the management, your financials, and then your request for funding. So one of the things I would say with the company summaries, think about who the audience is going to be that you're writing to, and also think about the ask. There should be, learn more here at the bottom, or, be clear that you do have a funding ask, and don't be shy about it, because if you're circulating these, somebody might hand it off and you might not ever know, who might say, oh yeah, I'd be willing to be an advisor. They're looking for help on medical device manufacturing, or they're looking for help in terms of learning how to build a social media marketing plan. So, I really do think about the ask, your needs, and be specific as you write the documents. Okay, so let the tuba lead the way. So I had to come up with a little bit of a fun acronym, but the one thing I would say here is that, this is one of the most important things that you're going to write as part of your executive summary, and that you're going to use over and over again. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a heads up now so that you can start thinking about, we're going to have everybody spend a couple minutes and do a quick draft of this. But the idea here is that you're writing something that is super concise, and because of its short and concise, you're having to be selective about what you include and what you exclude about how you describe your company. So the T in tuba, right, is the thing. You've got to be offering a product or service. I don't care what you're doing. You have to be making a thing. And so you have to be specific. It is going to be a hat. It is going to be a piece of software. It is going to be a consulting service. But I want you to be really specific about the thing. The U is for unique. So think about how you're going to be different. You want to stand out and have, one major thing, right? This is not about volume. This is about quality. What is the one thing that you're going to be the best in the world at, or you're changing the game that you want to get known for? The B is for benefit. So every time we buy products because they help us make a change. They help us go from point A to point B as a consumer. And when I make that change, when I go through that transformation, I get a benefit. It might be emotional, it might be sort of rational, but what is that benefit? What are you helping people, and some people call it the currency. What currency are you trading in? Are you making them more confident? Are you making them happier? Are you saving them money? Are you saving them time? Are you improving their health? But think about the benefit that your product is providing. And then the last one is the audience. Who are you serving? So be very clear, and the more specific you can be. So let's take a little bit of a look at the Peloton one. And the order of this is not important. I've used this order as an example, and a little bit of up above, right? Company is thing, that unique, so audience can benefit. If you have a better way of ordering it, then go for it, right? This is just to get you thinking and to give you a little bit of a guide. But on the Peloton one, is like Peloton is an online fitness platform so that's the thing that they are providing, right? We're subscribing to an online fitness platform with expert coaching and integrated equipment, right? So that's their expertise, or the thing that's making them unique. So that upscale fitness-oriented super moms, right? They're very specific about their audience that they were targeting, can better themselves while uniting with others. So it's both a personal improvement benefit as well as sort of a social with Peloton. And I mean, if you guys aren't familiar with Peloton, for me, it's a fascinating company in terms of what it's, the timing that they had for the pandemic was fantastic. But they started on Kickstarter, right? I mean, they basically put up a one-page marketing page to test out the equipment and see if people would back it. And then they grew from there. So, with really clear understanding of who they wanted to serve, they ended up raising a lot of money out of the gate, and have gone on to sort of grow and sort of change the way we think about fitness. So let me pause there. Any questions on that?
So maybe Hunter, Danielle had asked, maybe the rest of the crew might want to confirm this. She asked, is the executive summary intended to be for the company as a whole, or for the specific device or service you're planning to market? And I responded, it's a summary of the company as a whole, but any additional thoughts you would have for that?
So I think it's for the company as a whole, and for any startup, you are pitching your first product in your first market. So because as investors, we think about wanting to mitigate risk, and one of the things that drives our risk meter really high is when a young company without a lot of resources is trying to do too much. So I think you are, to Erick's point, you are talking about your company. But you want to be as specific as you can, both about the audience and your initial product out of the gate. And again, this is like leading with a headline. If you had one chip, you were going to Las Vegas and you had one chip to bet, which product are you going to put it on? And that's the mentality I want you to think about, right? This is not like, oh, I'm going to try these 5 things and I'm going to hope one of them is going to work. You're not going to get a lot of interest from investors for that. You want to be confident, and then they might come back and say, oh, have you thought of that? And you're like, oh yeah, we actually didn't prioritize that because we thought A, B, and C was going to be hard. And they're like, oh, well, I can help you overcome B. And you enter in a dialogue, but it's easier to bring them into that conversation with having clarity about one thing. They're going to have the confidence of you as an entrepreneur, and then you can potentially pivot or shift things down the road.
So to piggyback off of that, because thank you, Eric, for putting my question into verbal form. But I guess if there are multiple applications of a specific device, would you recommend in the executive summary focusing on the most salient of the applications, or is it okay to give a sense of the broad applicability, or the expected broad applicability, or maybe name like 3 applications, or I guess maybe that's kind of a funny question too.
So let me just play that back to make sure I'm understanding you, because you're the product or the service that you're selling has multiple sort of applications embedded into it.
Correct.
So let me ask you this question: Why is somebody buying the product? So if you thought about it, what is the most? So let me take a step back. So I think when we go to buy products and we go to interact, we're on a mission to do something, one thing. So when you think about your product, what is that one thing that, people are going to sort of buy or choose your product because of?
Yeah, to help alleviate venous insufficiency by propelling blood back toward the head.
So
But there
that's
are lots
that.
of other applications for that.
So, but that's what you want to lead with, right? That's what I would say, that you want to pick the thing that people are going to do it. And now you might substantiate that the reasons you're going to retain people, or the way that you're going to grow revenue, is to upsell and cross-sell the other applications or opportunities. But I think you want to put your best foot forward, and pick the one that solves the most urgent problem. Pick the one that people are going to pay the most for, right? I heard this the other day, that we want to be marketing our products to the problem that is waking people up at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night that they're worried about. And that's where you lead. If it's not a problem that's waking them up at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night, then just put it to the side and talk about it when it comes up. And if you've got two things that are waking people up in the middle of the night, you might have two companies. So especially if you're early on, right? Because it's really easy. And let me tell you, I've been there, and I've wasted a lot of money. I've wasted time in trying to basically ride two horses at the same time. So great question.
And if I could just add, Hunter, great question, Danielle, because I would imagine there's a lot of technical solutions in the audience tonight. One thing I would add is write it so that like a fifth grader could understand it, right? So, for example, I didn't hear the full description, Danielle, sorry, but I thought I heard something about blood pressure. So it's it's a solution so that people don't faint as much, and there are 50 million people that faint and they get head injuries and they whatever, right? But what we deliver is people faint less, rather than, well, the 72.3% inflation in blood pressure goes to this, like you lose people. And I'm not suggesting to dumb it down. I want to be very clear that it's not a process of dumbing it down. It's a process of making it accessible to the average reader, that they get it. So I think it's super important to, one, focus on the most important thing that keeps you up at night, as Hunter mentioned, but two, make it accessible to the readers so that they get it. Because if they don't get it, they're not going to read the rest of it. So get it to the point of what is the real benefit of what you're offering.
Yeah. And I do want to call out a comment. So Jim has posted a comment in the chat. I think he makes a great point. One of the other ways to think about finishing off your executive summary is to really sort of hammer home why you guys are the team, why you were destined to win. And so that does a couple things. I think it really helps, focus the mind and have you articulate your, sort of advantage in the marketplace. But again, it gives you a great opportunity to bring out some of the personality and some of the achievements that you've had. Do you have technology that's been recognized as the best? Do you have experts that are on the team that are really enable that? Did you have a successful Kickstarter, and that you have sort of an audience and customers that are already proven that you have momentum and traction? So that can be it wasn't on the list earlier, but I think it's a great section to sort of have at the close of an executive summary of why you will win. It sort of has a great element to these guys are confident enough to say that they're going to win. I'm interested in talking more to them about how they're going to pull that off. All right. So what I'm going to do, I want to pause and give everybody sort of 2 minutes to draft your TUBA statement. And then we'll sort of come back. We'll put everybody into groups just so you can meet some other people and also share and get a little bit of feedback. And then we'll come back and we'll share out a couple of them. So I'm going to set a timer here real quick, and we'll sort of give you 2 minutes to draft yours. Actually, I'm going to give you a minute. We're going to raise the bar here, keep this thing moving. And then I'm going to just drop us all into sort of random groups and give everybody a couple minutes to share out. All right, that's your minute. And let me put you into the breakout rooms, and then we'll pull you back here in about sort of 3 minutes. All right. So for those of you that have sort of summary statements that you're willing to share, I'd love to see some of them go by in the chat, so that other people can give you feedback or even learn from what you're doing or how you're describing your company.
Whew, that was quick, Hunter. And I got a smile. We had 56 folks on, and then as soon as we say, okay, you have to engage and go into the breakouts, like half fall. So credit to everybody that's still on the call. You guys are the real NVCers, and you're the hardcore. Yeah, baby.
Very good. All right. Well, I was just saying, Eric, I said I was encouraging people to put your statements in the chat just so that everybody can maybe comment or even sort of, be able to sort of learn from what you've done.
Love it. I look forward to seeing them.
Very cool. Let's see. Is anybody, we got one or two people that might want to share your statement just out loud?
Someone in my group had a really good one that could be massaged, but I don't know who it was. I recognize his face, but I didn't catch the name. There he is, Mark Besney. Mark, you should share yours.
Yeah, I can go. Our company provides a simple scheduling app for superintendents and foremen on a construction site to save time and reduce headaches.
Very good. What was the element in there that is unique? That's the key driver?
Yeah, it's focusing on a simple, easy to use on an iPad as opposed to on a computer that they typically don't have out on the construction sites.
Okay, so one of the things about thinking about being specific. So when you say something's easy, try to be more descriptive around the word easy. So I just like what you said there about being able to do it on site, right? There was I don't know if you've mentioned that in your summary, but being it for everybody, bringing out some of those details can bring it to life, and it also puts it in the language of your customer so that it will help with your marketing and your sales. And look, I mean, this is not an easy thing. I think all of you will probably go through multiple iterations before you get to March 22nd, if only on this summary. But the more you can sort of really refine it and then use it all the time, it will make all of your marketing that sort of I'm sure somebody will be talking about as you go through the process a lot easier to jump off from, because it gives you a really sound foundation. Fantastic. So before we move on quickly, any questions on that?
I just want to say some of the ones in the chat are really cool, Liza. I like fashionistas, right? It's a catchword that people will remember. Like, oh yeah, I want to be a fashionista. So some of the language in here, I think, is super great.
Very cool. Very good. Thanks for that, Eric. All right. So we'll keep us moving. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do here, let me actually change my view here. Go back. So one of the things that, whoops, that's not we'll go iPad. There we go. So one of the things that Eric and I are desperate for is to be back in the classroom. We sort of miss the interaction and the engagement. So you're going to have to bear with me a little bit on this one, because we're trying to interject a little bit of fun to liven up our Zoom sessions for everybody. So what we're going to do now is I really want you guys to leave with some foundation of your executive summary. So now you've got the summary. You've got the summary at the top, and we're going to try to help you get a couple of the headlines now to start to flush it out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to spin the wheel. We're going to randomly get one of these different sections, and we're going to give you a minute to generate a couple different headlines on each of them. We'll do this 2 or 3 times to give you a little bit of a flavor what needs to be in your executive summary. And would love it if people would share some of their headlines to help inspire your colleagues and your peers here. So, all right, let's go. Let me go back to the screen that I was showing, and we'll go to the wheel. And I'm going to spin it, and we'll see what we get for the first go around. All right, so current status. So this is going to be sort of a summary about where your business is at the current point of time. So take 1 minute and write down 2 or 3 headlines that would summarize your current status of your company.
And just to add, so that, are you at ideation stage, prototype stage, you've got sales, you're so investors want to understand where are you in the life cycle, because that'll filter how they'll read the rest of your plan. And perhaps while they're doing that, Hunter, I think a good point of clarification, because Sheik, hopefully I pronounced that okay, asked, just to clarify, is this TUBA statement the headline for the executive summary?
Yeah, so I tend to put that TUBA statement across the top of the executive summary. It will be the first thing that they read, so that they then, everything has context for that they read, because you're sort of substantiating the opportunity, you're substantiating, giving more details on the audience, and you're giving more details on the product as you walk through the executive summary. But you'll use it in lots of places. You'll use it in the elevator. You'll use it as you're having coffee with people. I read a story about one person where they were really trying to improve the company culture, and there was a CEO that walked around with a roll of $5 bills, and would give a $5 bill. If he asked somebody to recite it and they got it, he would give them a $5 bill. And the whole purpose was to get everybody in the company thinking the same way, caring about the same group of customers, knowing that the one thing they were selling was sort of the main product and why they were different. And so that really then enabled the entire workforce to be a sales force. They were all saying the same message. It was being repeated in the customer service calls. It was being repeated when people were just going out to dinner to hang out, and was a great amplifier. All right, so any quick headlines people want to share on company status? Eric, anything in the chat? I can't see it at the moment.
Not specifically. There's some really, I just, shout out to Jim and Claire and everybody that put in their TUBA, but nothing in the chat. This one's pretty straightforward. The company status. Anything in? So William's saying successfully prototyped. So what does that mean? Successfully prototyped? Does that mean a working prototype?
That is correct.
Okay, so and words can mean a lot. I would recommend working prototype, right? Or even better is working prototype being used by customer, right? So other thoughts from the crew? Let's see in the chat here. Ideation stage with initial wireframe and building. What is it? VO beta learning? Is that version 0 beta learning from Josh?
I think the other thing I would say for some of those is think about putting a time on it. Hey, you're 6 months from the launch of your MVP. Or so you can use using a time and a result or an outcome can also be a great way to communicate the status. All right, let's do one more here. We'll spin the wheel. All right, funding. This is a good one. All right, so think about a headline for your funding. What is going to essentially be either where you are with funding, or think about what your ask is, right? This is one of the hardest things that so many people don't do. And if you don't ask for money, you won't ever get it. So, think about how you might have a headline around what your capital needs are for your company. And feel free to drop them in the chat and share them as you go through. I'm going to find my chat. Jim actually brings up a good point. He talks about non-dilutive grants. That's one of the things I would call out is, especially given that everybody's associated with CU, Sally Hatcher and the team, there's some great programs to learn about the SBIRs and STTRs and some of the other non-dilutive opportunities for funding, especially if you are more research-based in terms of, what you're doing, the product, and so the business you started. a great way to sort of get some capital and build out that runway and preserve that equity.
So what I'm observing is nobody's got a number in here. Anybody asking for 10 million? 100 million? Come on, let's go big. All right, Mark's going to throw down the gauntlet. He's looking for 100 grand.
Well, and we got Clifford here, 500K for 18-month runway to market. So Clifford, I think that's a great statement. I would just stop there. I would say seeking 500K for 18-month runway to market. And then your bullets could be, use in maybe the 3 primary ways you're going to use your funds. And so that would be a really nice, concise way to communicate funding.
We've got a bold crew. Some are asking for 10 billion. Elon Musk's net worth. Yeah, why not? But to add to,
you can always bump into him in Boulder. He comes here, once or twice a year. So who knows?
His bro's here, so yeah. I've actually seen him around. I think Matthew has a good example of seeking 900,000 for 2 years, R&D, salaries, marketing. Right? What's it going for? I think that's helpful to investors. What are you going to spend the money on? What do you need it for?
Yeah, and I think that's a good one. You can also think about how you might include the outcome. Like, where does that get you? What's sort of the result that's going to drive, right? The R&D, the salaries, and the marketing are the enablers, so the resources. But it's also what's a great way to talk about the outcome. Very good. All right. So I'm gonna keep us moving. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of flavor in terms of writing the headlines. As you are writing those, the goal is going to be basically for every section you're going to take a section, you're going to create some headlines for each individual section, and then you're going to think about the three supports that you're going to put underneath it. And, again, if you want to write it more in prose, that's going to be up to you and your style and how you want to bring out your personality. Or you can do it as sort of more of a bulleted, and that other example I showed in terms of blocks of headline with supports. But do remember, I encourage you to use action words, be concise, and if you're going to say it's going to increase or decrease, try to use numbers to be as specific as you can around those. So what we just went through was really the company summary. The company executive summary. So we've done the one-page memo that really sort of helps you think about how you can communicate and influence somebody around a given topic. We've talked about the company executive summary, which I think is a great tool for explaining what your business is all about in terms of a simple way. And that could be for investors, it's for pitch competitions. It could be to recruit employees, right? So, but it tells you more holistically about the company, the opportunity, and where you are. And this last one I want to go through is a one-page marketing website. And if you go to activemedia.works, this is a company that I'm launching with some partners this quarter. And so this is exactly what we're doing. And you'll see we've got that statement that you just made, right, is what we have on the home, this top panel of the website. Active Media transforms videos into interactive media experiences that empower students to engage more deeply with your content. So we're leading right out of the bat with sort of the summary statement. And then on the right-hand side is sort of the outline that you'll see that we follow in the page. And the reason I am a big believer about this is one of the things that I think companies should be doing is we've got to test that there's demand for our product before we spend too much money or we invest. And I know for some R&D companies, this is not the exact path, but I also believe it's really a great experience to be putting it out there and saying, what is the feedback to the best promise I can put in the market? Because before you build anything, if you can't get a reaction and people to be interested in the best thing you can promise and the best benefit you could potentially deliver, then you're going to have a hard time making a go of it. So we use these all the time to sort of validate and sort of test out different proposition ideas as you work through this. So gives you a great example, gives a great way of getting feedback from the customer audience, and hopefully this has helped as you go through it. One of the things that I always do, encourage people to do, is put a call to action, ask people to send you an email for more information. Maybe they can make an advanced purchase, and so you can start to get some feedback in terms of the demand, but you also can be getting customers to come through that you can start to do discovery interviews with, and even build a community that will help you, launch more quickly when you're ready. All right.
So Hunter, sorry, in the chat real quick, I'd love your perspective. Apparently Nicole mentioned on Tuesday or whenever she did her pitch night, I think there was a gentleman working with her. They suggested not to ask for a specific dollar amount. I haven't really heard that before. Any reaction that you have to that?
Well, just to clarify,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just to clarify, what she or somebody else was saying on Tuesday was that we would potentially run the risk of getting in trouble in that it would be a general solicitation. It's not, I'm not totally clear what that means. I don't know, but I think some other folks heard the same thing. That was why I had brought that up. It was a little ambiguous. So.
Oh, from a legal perspective, I actually don't know. I mean, I don't. If you're not directly seeking investment and you're just sort of saying that the company is will need $500,000 to launch the MVP, I don't think that would be an issue. Shane is saying that he was thinking it was specifically in educational settings, and that may be true.
Yeah, I guess to be clear, if you know what your venture needs, whether it's money or mentors or employees or whatever, you can ask for that. Probably maybe what they're mentioning is don't say like, hey, can you, Mr. or Mrs. Judge, give me 500,000, right? That would be a solicitation. But you say, hey, I'm presenting the company, for the company to move forward, we need X to do that. That's fine. If it's not, then I've been breaking the law for 35 years. Yeah.
So I think the other way that you can do it is you can say that currently, Active Media is in our seed round of funding and we're raising $500,000. So it's a statement about where we are and where we are in the process, and it's not a solicitation. And I don't see what would be wrong with that for anybody to be making a similar type of statement. So, so one thing is then, before we move on to sort of really wrap anything up, any questions on any of the different one-pagers?
Yeah, would you advise against kind of you gave us 2 examples, and you said you would even slim down the one with the graphs more. Is there any reason you would advise against kind of visuals like that on specifically the executive summary and not wait for those to be later in the business document, the business pitch document kind of?
I think actually having visuals in it is great. What I was referring to in that document was there was the table, the financial table that had a lot of detail. I'd take out some of that detail. I'd simplify it and maybe have year 1 revenue and year 1 sort of EBITDA and year 2. And so I'd get it down to like 6 numbers rather than I think there were like 15. And I tend to be a fan of some of the, you'll see a lot of people are using the big circles for market share or for TAM, and then sort of the element of that they're working. I think those work effectively in terms of really simple graphics to give an understanding that how the size of the market. The other thing I think is great that goes along with that is I'm a big fan of customer unit economics. So if you can clearly explain that you understand, how much revenue you're going to get from an individual customer per year, what your acquisition cost per year is. And then it sort of everybody, I think you communicate clearly that you have a good grounding of the basic economics of the drivers of the business. And so when you show a number, if somebody then asks a question of how did you go from, a sort of a annual revenue of $100 a customer to your $3 million projection, you can talk to them about how you acquired customers, and you've addressed a lot of the revenue elements, with sort of a really clear statement in the document.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay. If there are any other questions, please put in the chat. We'll make sure we address as many as we can, but I'll keep us moving here. So just to reiterate, so March 1st is the deadline for everybody to get your pitch and your executive or your company summary, executive summary in if you want to compete in the specialty categories or in specialty week. And then March 22nd for everybody else around the rest of the competition. Now, the challenge I have for you guys before you submit your executive summaries is to do this. Share it with 10 people. And don't lead the witness here. Just have them read it and then say, after you've read it, would you do me this favor? And give them a link to the Google form and ask them 2 questions. Have them in their own words explain what the company does, and have them in their own words explain 3 things that stood out. And if they are not the things that you want to be coming across, then rework your executive summary. We all write things and we think they're clearly communicated and they're not. And we use words that people don't understand. So I think this is a really simple and great exercise. I think it's a good challenge. And if you guys I'm sure everybody's competing and wants to win the $100,000 and the prizes at the end. So I think it's good to start sharpening the saw early and get as much feedback as often as you can through the process. And I'm volunteering Erick and I, and if you want us to read it and answer those questions, shoot them our way. I'd be happy to sort of see if I take away the things that you want me to take away. All right, so let me bring this thing home and sort of in closing. So first of all, it's been my pleasure to be here with you guys tonight. I hope you've sort of taken away at least a few things. And as a summary, a couple of the things I want to leave you with. Like I tend to think of things as binary. I know there's a lot of things that are in between, but from a simplicity, guiding my principles, here's some things to think about, right? One page over many pages forces you to be sort of more discerning with what you share. Headlines over details. Don't get yourself tied up in problems that you don't have to if you start simple. And it also allows you to earn that respect and bring people in. Focus on benefits over features. And again, I think, it was, as an engineer, like all I normally wanted to do was talk about the features, how cool the tech was, how we got a computer to do X. But when you're communicating effectively, especially around ventures, lead with the benefits, lead with how you're going to change people's lives, how you're going to make their sort of situation better. Be specific over general. It's really easy to get lazy here, so it's a great thing to try to continue to be challenge and keep moving forward and bring yourself through it. Don't be bland. Be willing to take that risk of maybe getting some criticism or getting some feedback. But trust me, the more you put yourself out there and the more you're going to find people that want to help you rather than what looks like a cardboard cutout in terms of your pitch. And I truly believe that by doing all of these things over here, that these are the benefits. That the best communicated ideas win, right? If you write it down, put it on paper, even if it's one page, it's now a thing, right? It's not a thing if it's in our head. So put it down, clearly communicate it, get other people excited about it. The best communicated ideas win. use your communications to build trust and interest, to explain more, and get help, right? I mean, it's a great way of getting feedback and getting people to work with you. It will allow you to sell your ideas more effectively. If you know what your top messages are, you can say them simply. You can leave that space for somebody to respond. You will learn how to sell your ideas more effectively. And then take Erick's class, and you'll really learn how to sell your ideas more effectively. It will allow you to build better relationships, and then most importantly, you'll learn more, right? If the more you share an idea, the more it gets better. And like, you've got to be willing to put it out there, be wrong, have it be better. One of the things that strikes me, the almost hands down, if I go across the board, the best entrepreneurs are not the smartest people. They are the people that are willing to ask the most questions. That they are the people that are willing to put ideas out there and get feedback. Opportunity is infinite. We just have to be willing to go find it. So with that, that's a wrap. Oh, I got one more thing to share. Here are some other resources. I will share the deck, and so that you can provide these links. There's a bit.ly link, one-page memo template that will give you guys the template I use. There's one for the Family Box company summary, and then activemedia.works is the link to that website I shared. A couple books that if you want to be improving your writing that I have found helpful over the years. One is Barbara Minto wrote The Pyramid Principle. So she was a McKinsey consultant. It's for the engineers on the call. It's a really logical way to think about communicating effectively in sort of a pyramid structure. Pretty dry, but you can add your own spice to it. But I have found it to be very effective. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And then Donald Mueller has a book, Building a Story Brand, and it has a lot of the same themes that we've talked about tonight. But it's like if you spend the time to get your message right up front, it will make a lot of things a lot easier as you go through your process of for all of you creating a successful company. So with that, want to say thank you. Wish you the best of luck. On sort of the NVC, let me go back real quick. I'm at hunter.albright@colorado.edu. For those of you who want to find me, I'm happy to help and do as much as I can with Erick and the rest of sort of this Deming and CU crowd. But it's been my pleasure. So with that, I know we're at time, but I'm happy to hang around and answer a few questions if there any of that are out there.
And Hunter, that was amazing. You must be an engineer because you're right at 7 o'clock. Well played. So two things, guys, as we wrap up. Let's do a quick chat storm of thanks and appreciation for Hunter. So just share, a word or two in our chat to appreciate this awesome content that Hunter drove for all of you. And then the second thing is, for those that got to drop right at the top of the hour, we'll see you later. Good luck with the NVC. Look forward to seeing all your concepts. But as Hunter mentioned, we're happy to stick around and answer further questions if you want to. Otherwise, Hunter, you rocked. That was amazing. And thanks, everybody. Look forward to seeing your concepts on NVC.
A question for you guys. Well, first of all, thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I was wondering, so